All right, we're here for our release management Think Big. I think it's number 6, could be number 7. I think it's number 6. Good job, y'all. Hyana, you have the first item, and then I added a couple of different points. So we can, if you want to review the release page user interviews, I'll let you.
Yeah, I added this here last week, but I just wanted to hear from you folks if you still want me to go over some of the points that are highlighted during the release meeting that we already had today, because I don't want to repeat myself.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, we're going to implement the prototypes that we've designed, and we'll then go back and create issues and make improvements as we learn more from the users, just so that we understand conceptually how we're going to change the product. And to reiterate that we're not going to try to like change things in flight. So whatever's on the board now with those designs implemented, and then we'll go from there. But any questions or thoughts?
I had one question. There was something you said, Hyana, and I didn't want to kind of hijack the meeting over it, was about how we didn't want to, something like we didn't want to couple release and tags too tightly or something like that. Or maybe I've paraphrased.
This is a really good meeting to talk about this, because I think Nathan has a lot of context into why we're going down the route that we're going down. But let's definitely tease it out a little bit. We've decided that there are places where users would just want to tag their code and not create a release from it.
Okay,
to say
sure.
that they have like a pre-release version that they want to call V1, and then they're going to do more changes, and then they're going to release V1.1. And that's going to be the one that they want to release. And that's what they want to create the release from. So having some sort of separation between releases and tags was important. But on the form, what we wanted to show is that people can create the release. And then if they want to expand or to collapse to create a tag or just a release, there's the option today in the form to do that. And Hyana, feel free to elaborate on that.
So I get that use case that we might want to have tags that are not associated with a release. But isn't our current setup, which I guess could change, that a release always is based on a tag? Oh, okay, that's not changing, right?
That's not changing.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, gave me a minor heart attack there.
But it's just really the way that people really felt overwhelmed with the amount of data they were seeing on the page just to create, for example, a tag. They really don't want to, be bored. That's why also we are adding the expand option so that they can close it and do only that.
Yeah.
But then I like what Jackie said in the beginning. I really see that there's room for improvement, because we need to think about what if I started filling in a form in my tags page with data related to a release, and I collapse it, but then I still create a release, right? Right now we are not really thinking of those edge cases. So I think we need to open some investigation there to define some workflows, or really revisit the experience, because I think it's not the best.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the problem with that though. What's the problem with the collapse?
So for example, say that I go in and I create a tag, I expand it, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to start creating my release, and then I leave that page. And then if I go back to the release tab, it has the option. We have the option to keep that information in that tag pre-populated on that and allow you to save it. Or we say that you leave that tab and you leave the releases page. We're not going to keep that session, and we're going to expire it. And now you have to recreate everything from scratch. Okay.
So which one do we go for?
Well, Hyana says we should validate if that's important. Whenever I am creating release notes, when I was a release manager and I was using GitHub to create release notes, I can't tell you how many times I've refreshed the page and I had to rewrite my release notes. So then I started creating my release notes in a Google Doc and copy pasting it because I didn't want to have to refresh and then suck myself again. I'll have to edit this video.
But this is a particularly this is I wouldn't say unique feature of GitLab, but it's something that GitLab's got all over the place, right? Like you start working on I've done it many times, right? You start working on a comment, and then you go off some other page and you come back and then bang, here it is, right? Which is not easy to do, but secondly, a lot of products don't have it actually. Like GitHub doesn't have it.
No,
if you leave the page, you've lost
absolutely right. You've lost it. So it could be a differentiator from a user experience.
Okay.
So that's why we might want to implement it, but it also might not be worth implementing because the time and effort, if it doesn't happen often, like if people aren't creating a tag and then saving it and then going back to edit it, it's really comes down to workflow. So as a user, do I typically generate my tag first, attach a bunch of stuff to it, then declare my release? And if I'm declaring my release at that time, do I have my release notes already written up? Or am I building that out at the same time as generating a tag? So we need to do a little bit more validation with that.
I'm just frowning because, like, Nathan, how does this actually work on the front end? Where does it go with this temporary unsaved content?
I think it probably is in local storage, is my thought, in the browser.
Okay. So it's not actually...
right. It's not in the database for sure, because I've switched browsers and it gets
then
lost.
you would actually lose it then. Okay, right, that's fair enough.
A really good example of this is I pull up an issue in Slack and I start writing an issue like on my phone, and then I pull an issue up in the same issue in an email, and my issue content's not in my email. So I have to go back to the Slack to send the issue comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it's browser specific.
I think in general, like the feedback we receive was also that release notes are important, and it's the area in this interface or in the flow that people go back and forth because they want to review, and the status of the release changes from the moment you create and the moment you actually release it. So I think that's a very a relevant field for auto saving or storing the data somewhere. I believe that people would go to tags, for example, to change a tag or to change a milestone if they selected something by mistake. That's also the input we've been receiving. That is not really something, I'm just going to change the release tag. No, maybe if you screw up, you really need to start over. But having the flexibility to have the edit field the way we do now, I think it's already super helpful. But yeah, it was really nice to hear a bunch of these suggestions and improvements. And I think in general, moving forward, what I want to make sure is that the page doesn't become a monster, because the way we are also displaying this data on the release view is that we are adding a lot of content, right?
Yeah.
And we need to be a bit mindful about how we want to translate the API attributes to the UI and what makes more sense. So one of the users say that he would like to have the tags, the milestone field next to the tag, because to him, those are related and not at the very end. So that also shows how the data is displayed on the UI when you're seeing your release item created.
Yeah.
Also, I'm really looking forward to some of the design on releases.
Yeah, it's a big feature actually. The whole release, and then once you throw evidence in as well, it's big. Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to have all the capabilities built out in the front end and then start testing with our users and people who are leveraging it. Cause I think that's where we'll get a lot of more actionable insights. That will be probably the next big, you'll see like a ton of issues that will start coming out. And my expectation would be like 13.13 and 13.5, like those 3 milestones will be dedicated to refreshing that UI.
13, could you say again? 13, 4, and 5?
Yeah.
So what I should know this, but we've got 12.10, and then what's after? When do we get to 13?
So what's kind of cool is that they're debating having our major release next month. So 13 might actually end up being in June, which means we would be able to build out a lot of our stuff in 12.11 if we decided to do it in 12.11. Because right now I just have add milestones as a release P1 for 12.10. And then of course, adding the runbook links. So editing links. But eventually we'll need to add all this other feature functionality. And that was going to happen between now to 13.1.
So there'll, if it's June, then it'll be like, there'll be 12.12.
Well, 12.11 doesn't exist yet.
I mean, sorry, we're in
we're about to kick off the last release.
April. That'll be 12.10, and then there'll be 12.11. Oh, then there'll be 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they decide to move it to June. If they don't, then we only have one more release prior to the major release, which will be 13 in May.
Okay. Got it.
So if we swarm it, and if we were to swarm all of the edit capabilities, like put you, Sean, Vlad, and Kraz, Jake, and Nathan on all the edit release UI stuff, I think we could get that completed by 13.
Yeah, particularly, I mean, because we deprioritize pages.
Exactly.
I mean, we're actually kind of freeing up quite a lot of, developer ability.
And that was actually a really good comment, because I just posted on our Think Big Release Management, the new product metrics that they're starting, the product leadership is going to start holding product managers accountable to. And if we look at the top 25 issues, 4 of them are in our area of release management. And there's 500 issues or 1,000 issues that are in this top customer requested issues. And
sorry, can you share your screen?
It's a link in the Periscope. Every time I share my screen with Periscope, it lags really bad. I tried to do this in my last meeting. So
and what are they? Okay, right. Vault. Okay.
Can you see it now? Okay.
Yep.
So manage Vault, and then we have environment variables from dependent jobs.
Okay.
Which is in the backlog. Vault integration, so 2 Vault integration issues, and then there's one more. Pages without DNS.
Oh, there is no pages one. Cool.
So, and what Vlad has posted in the pages without DNS evaluation is kind of cool. He was like, we could make this just a paid feature, which would be a really great opportunity to either increase the investment in pages by making it a paid feature, which would be good, because a lot of our customers who are asking for that feature are also paid.
Oh, so Pages is completely free at the moment.
Yes.
We're giving way too much, I think.
I know. And that's why I'm getting pressure as a product manager to like, hey, dude, you got to drive IACV, so stop investing in Pages. That's pretty much what they're telling me. They're like, yeah, where's your revenue? So I've been, of course, running down other revenue opportunities like, hey, you're just using source code management. You can use GitLab releases to do inner sourcing. And we have a couple of customers that have adopted releases for inner sourcing, even though they're not doing CI with GitLab.
Right.
Which is cool. Not really our target market, but it's a way to make up for the fact that like I can't influence IACV or ARR with Pages today. And 3/4 of our team is spent in some capacity on Pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is expensive. Like we have to.
Well, we probably have a lot of, on GitLab.com, the infrastructure costs for Pages would be probably quite a bit.
Yeah.
Storage. Yeah.
And hopefully with the re-architecture, we'll reduce some of that, right? But.
Well, it's just, I don't know what the numbers are, but I think a lot of people are using it, and it's, we're running a server. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
You're going down a really good tangent. That's why I want it to be like transparent as to what's motivating product priorities. And I just got a new tidbit of information from leadership saying, hey, I know that we're telling you to drive this revenue number, and although the Pages category has nothing to do with revenue, you have a top requested issue from sales. So this would suggest to me that, hey, that means I could potentially continue to invest in Pages because it's a revenue driver.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I think that, has there been some historical reason why Pages is free, or is it just kind of,
it was a personal, hey, we're going to be, give a gift to the community to encourage contribution. Okay. It's also to compete with Pages from a GitHub perspective.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay.
And given that we're not in the quality realm as Netlify, like from a Jamstack perspective and from a storage perspective,
different product. Yeah.
It's so different that like we have to be differentiated enough to to compel usage, and differentiation enough is to give it for free, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of ways that we can think about this creatively, but I just wanted to give you visibility into that perspective. Mm-hmm. Before I talk about runbooks, I wanted to check in on deploy freezes, given that 12.10 is around the corner, and that's one of our flagship features for 12.10. So in the 12.10 kickoff, I have 3 flagship features. One of them is deploy freezes MVC. And I think that the only hanging item here is that there needs to be a backend issue created, but I'm not quite sure what the backend issue is going to say. So
yeah. So well, I don't know if you want to say something first about that, Nathan.
Not particularly. From my point of view, we're pretty much like, we have a pretty solid proposal. I think we're ready to start making some progress on it. That's from my point of view, but I won't be doing the back end implementation. So
yeah, I would really like to do if we can find, a POC, a rough POC, like I would probably give it 2 days maximum, which, presumably we'll be able to use that code anyway. Because there's a few gray areas in the back end that I'm not really 100% sure about, and particularly if we start to use this, what's the feature called? The pipeline.
The resource groups.
The resource groups. Thanks. Yeah, because initially I thought this is a really good idea, but now I'm starting to dig into it like it's slightly a different use case. Because in fact, I said at first we're going to get. This is great. We're going to get the restart for free, but see how, as I understand it, I think the way it works is, when there's a blocked pipeline, when the other pipeline finishes, then it's the trigger to unblock the other one. So that's why it can restart. Whereas our use case is different. There won't be another parallel process. So that means we have to have some type, if we're going to have restartable, which we said initially no. So, we said it's not going to be restartable initially. But if we start to use a resource groups feature, it is designed to be restartable, and it's designed to be triggered by another pipeline process. I think I would just need to, as I said, do a POC, because maybe that's not the right direction to go in. Although it does feel like the right direction, because I think that we'd have to have some type of independent process, like a background process that's kind of waking up every now and then, seeing whether we need to unfreeze this pipeline. So that all adds kind of a lot of stuff, or we could just build it independently, but it does make sense to try and reuse something that's already there.
That makes sense to me.
Oh, sorry, Nathan.
No, I'm just saying that makes sense to me.
I just feel like it just needs more. I need to write some code to really give the proper answer. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm creating your tech evaluation issue right now for this. We're gonna queue it up for 12.10, a release P1, and it'll block deploy freezes MVC, so that we know we have to do that work first prior to implementing the deploy freeze MVC. And then after you do the POC, if you can update the proposal, I think, Nathan, you can still proceed with any front end if there is anything on the current proposal. I don't think there is, though. Let me check.
Yeah,
I don't think we have any mock-ups yet.
No, that was going to be my question, if the current description, because I think it was last updated a week ago, if it meets the criteria from the decisions made. And because if there are things that we can move forward with the front end and that affect the UI, then also need to work with you, Nathan.
I mean, the way I see a POC, and if the GitLab methodology is different from this, is that I just basically more or less hack something together in the back end without tests, without without, worrying too much about code quality and that type of stuff, but just making sure that all the pieces can connect together. And then if that looks okay, then that gets turned into proper code with, following all the rules, or we start a new MO altogether. I don't know, but is that more or less how it's done at GitLab?
Sounds right to me.
Yeah. Because then, then you can pull something together pretty fast. It's actually all the process that slows us down. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
It does feel like we're making this MVC a little bit more complicated than what the proposal says, because the proposal does say that we're not going to restart it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if, like, is it because we've heard feedback that we need to restart it, or
no, in fact,
MVC could still be good if we don't restart it?
No, in fact, it's not. In fact, in fact, it's not about. So what happened was, in the investigation, I think Shinya suggested, hey, why don't you use resource groups? This is actually kind of what you need. And so I had a look at that, and it does look good, like, because it's already handling stopping pipelines for, blocking pipelines essentially. But then it's like, oh, and it restarts. Awesome, right? Here we have for free restarting, but in fact, it's actually a bit more complicated than that because of this. There is another pipeline that's doing the blocking, and it's then the trigger to. So I definitely recognise that restarting is not at all in the original MVC, and we should just probably leave it out. But then if we start to use this feature and we're using it so differently than how it's already been used, then maybe it's not worth. Maybe we should just build something else. If we start, if we use resource groups in such a different way than what it's actually been designed for.
That's my fear too, is that we're just wasting time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Trying to use the restart functionality when really, like,
we don't need it. We don't want it. Yeah.
It might just make more sense to say trigger at timestamp, to re-trigger the pipeline.
Yeah, because also there's another related issue out in this, in the issue sphere, which is this one about the evidence. The evidence creation one is actually related, right? Because what we're missing at GitLab is this ability to really schedule something in the future and have it reliable, because we're just using Sidekick, right? And so we don't have a proper scheduling environment like MQ series or something like that, right? So if we start trying to do stuff based on future timestamps, we're essentially going to need to build something, I think, and that's the whole big thing by itself.
Yeah, I like the way your brain is thinking on that front, connecting this to release evidence, because I think from an efficiency standpoint, we'd want to try to reuse those two components as much as possible for releases. Yep. So that makes sense. I am really worried that we're detracting from the focus and the value we're trying to drive with this deploy freeze MVC. So, like, the MVC is to allow somebody to set a window and then they just go manually and rerun it. Like,
I vote for that.
Okay. Yep. So do we feel like
it just doesn't let it run? It just
stops it. And then I have the tech evaluation issue that I'm going to relate here, and I'll add as a comment, Sean, for us to evaluate resource groups or a way to restart it automatically. And then we can pull that into right after we deliver the MVC.
Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe the MVC is considering how resource groups is being coded, but not actually to use it at this point, but maybe to have a path to go there.
Yeah. So, Hannah, going back to your question, what decisions do you think we still need to make on the proposal? I think that we're going to go with option 1.
Yeah.
I just need to grab my charger. Sorry.
Okay. No, you're good.
So let me just paste here the comment that has the proposal, because I think my problem right now is to understand where's the decision being made, because we need to update this, the issue description. I think also.
Yeah, I'm looking at the issue. Let me share my screen because I'm looking at the issue right now to kind of like navigate.
From my point of view, it sounds like everyone kind of agrees that option 1 that I posted originally is the way to go. And then there's some minor things we need to figure out, particularly around the syntax, what this is going to look like in the YAML file. We haven't nailed that down yet. But I think we probably have settled on option 1 enough that we can move that up to the description.
Okay.
But we're going for this like page, right?
Say it again.
What was that? Sorry.
We're going for this. We're going to have a separate page that has these blackout periods, and then we just refer to it.
Yeah, I think so. Yep. I haven't heard. There doesn't seem to be any big objections to that.
No, I think that's definitely the way to go. Yeah.
But can you folks repeat that? What? Different page?
Just
A section.
like
Add
a
new,
settings page.
add new deploy freezes section to the project settings CI/CD
I
page.
see this now.
And did we decide, by the way, that we're not going to use named freeze periods, right? We're just going to have whatever's on that page gets applied if you say freeze period, opt-in. Because you could see the future version would be they would all have names, and then you could say which names you wanted to use.
Let me update this description real quick, and then then we can kind of nitpick through it. I think is what needs to happen here. So proposal, I'm going to kill this out, and then actually, yeah, I'll kill that out. And
Okay, you store in the database. So that implies there's a page to control that.
which is what we're calling deploy freeze section of the project under the CI/CD page.
Yep.
Okie doke. Let me save this change here.
So that needs to be some type of table, right? Because you got like start, stop, time zone. Right.
And that criteria kind of need to update later. Like, are we going to allow multiple freezes per deployment, per period set per project? And also, I think the current prototypes that where we talk about informing users that the freeze is set. I think those are still valid, but I'll have to look at these again.
We're going to use the banner, right? For the info, yeah.
Yeah, this makes the scope a little bit larger for me from my UX point of view, but I don't think it will be a staple. But it just adds more prototyping to it.
Right, and so then in the YAML we just say, are we using the freeze? Right, we're not using sections of the freeze in this version.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think it'd be quite a bit more complex to have multiple freezes, and so yeah.
But I think it's definitely, I can see it being the next progressive step, or maybe not next necessarily, but a future progressive step.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it'd be a nice feature. Like especially if you're running like a really big server and you want to at the group level to define. Right. You have like a weekends freeze and a holidays freeze and that. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so.
Now, do we also want to make possible for users to opt out from the environments, like the freeze for environments on the UI, or is it something that you need to do on the CI file? You set on the UI and then you opt out on the CI? Or everything through the UI?
My opinion is that everything should be defined in the YAML file. I think it'd be kind of strange to have kind of two sources of truth there.
Mm.
So Nathan, are we going with opt-in or opt-out, do you think?
Well, I liked the idea of opt-out, because that would allow people to start using it right away without changing their YAML files at all. But I'm struggling to think of a syntax that would allow you to express that in a way that makes sense. Yeah, 'cause I don't really know how to say ignore the global freeze. Like we don't really have doesn't really fit with our rules syntax. But if we can think of a good syntax for it, I'm definitely for an opt. out.
So I quite like the opt-out. Sorry, Hannah, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say that I think there's a comment by Kenny that says, or someone else, I don't know, too many comments, that say that we might have just a CI file with a lot of opt-out. So is this something that could make the workflow just boring or complex if you have to opt out from multiple environments through the CI file?
Yeah, because you can argue both ways. Because I did suggest the opt-out. However, when you think about it, it's great if you've got a site that's got, okay, they've got lots of projects, right? And they don't want to have to go into all the YAML. But on the other hand, the counter argument is that once they've set up a single freeze period, that's automatically blanket applied to everything, right? And maybe that could be a bit of a shock if you weren't expecting it, right?
Why can't we just go with opt-out?
Well, that would be opt-out. So
Okay.
yeah, so that means that, but say you've got 50 projects, and that means they're all going to get that freeze period automatically, unless they specifically opt out, which might be what you want.
Yeah, I think that makes sense from the users that I have talked to, that one of the big requirements was they wouldn't want to have to go in and manually add this to a project. And I guess we can learn if they're okay manually removing it from a project.
Well, I guess if if they don't define any freeze period, well then obviously there's no freeze period.
No freeze period, right?
Yeah.
But then also when we move this to a group level, it should be easier, right? You're just gonna have one source of truth for, let's say on the UI, I'm talking about the UI, for your freezes. And I'm not sure technically how you would manage that on the CI.
Well, you have this example group freeze YAML, right?
Well, I think we went a bit further into discussions, and that YAML needs to turn into, well, it could turn into a table, like a table of 3 columns, or maybe 4 columns if you're going to give it. I thought about maybe giving it a name, but not actually using the name yet. But yeah.
Do you think this table would be included in this MVC, or should we move it out?
Well, we need somewhere to define the freeze periods.
Okay.
Yeah. So I initially thought, well, let's just make it a text area to put YAML in it as an easier step. But in fact, probably the parsing of that YAML and everything else would probably be easy if we just had a simple Rails table. Maybe just do it in Haml and don't use JavaScript for the time being. And then, because ultimately you can see if we get to some type of thing with overrides and a calendar and everything, that's going to need to be a pretty complex component.
Right.
But for the time being, it doesn't need to be that complicated.
Okay. So what I've done is I've copy pasted up to the issue description what I think was the final decided scope to move forward with. So Sean and Nathan, would love your eyes on it to confirm that the issue description reflects what we've discussed, and if there's any other open items that we need to remove from this. And then
yeah, I'll go through this afterwards. There's a few things that we've discussed that have changed.
okay.
Like we're not going to use only except, we're going to use rules. But I can go through and edit that after this meeting.
Nathan, do you want to break this down into the settings and like the banners, and all the informative tooltips, because this freeze is going to be shown in a lot of places in GitLab. We also talked about the merge request widget. So I feel like the scope from a UI point of view, it's pretty wide. So if you want to talk later about how to break this down in a way that makes sense, that things are dependent, they're built together, I'm happy to discuss.
Sure. Yeah, I would assume for this MVC, we basically don't show it anywhere else in the UI. Like
Right.
We're not adding indicators or anything. Like we're just doing the bare minimum to
I agree
enter
with
and view data.
Yes.
Just
So then, Hyana, then, oh, sorry, Sean. So then Hyana, what you're asking for would be follow-on issues that we would deliver after this.
That makes sense. Then for me, it's best if I just have I work on this.
Okay.
One goal, and then we can create the issues, and I'll just add the criteria, and then we can follow up with the improvements.
Perfect. Sean, sorry.
Yeah. So something that got touched on in this, in the conversation in the issue was, so we can't actually, we don't know it's a production environment or whatever, and so do we whatever the syntax is going to be in the CI, whether it's opt in or opt out or whatever it's going to be, do we do that at the only in jobs that have an environment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. Yep. So yeah, you'd only, exactly. Yep.
Okay. And so, because then actually, we can decide, well, okay, let's deploy the staging environment still, but obviously not the production during the freeze period. But then all the other jobs could still run, right? All the, tests or whatever.
Right. Like if it's not linked to an environment, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I'm not as worried about that. We had talked about like seeing all these jobs tagged with opt-outs of the environment freeze.
Yeah.
It's only the environment jobs that will be affected. So you won't need to opt out except for the environment jobs.
Right.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So I think the only action on this is just to review this issue, and then Hyana, you and I can either carve out what's in this UX proposal for additional issues, because I think the tooltip is the only one that we'll be adding in the MVC, and then merger request view and all of this stuff will be out of this MVC. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, makes sense. Then I rather not lose this information and start it somewhere. I want to be working on it.
Perfect. Okay. So then let's see. That was a really good discussion on deploy freezes. Thank you all so much. I feel a million times better. I've been like anxiously looking at this issue being like, this doesn't seem right. What am I doing? So thank you. On Forrester, so we had a big presentation with an analyst called Forrester. It was on Monday, and we presented to them our CDRA offering. And last year, we were rated as a contender in the space. And my goal is to get us to a leader, right? Like that is my goal as a product manager. So I think we absolutely showed every single thing that they asked for. We demoed all of the functionality, and we were able to showcase like 75% of it in the UI, which was a really cool thing for us to do. So really good job, guys. I'll be really excited to share with you when we do get that leader standing, because we were able to show things that like Zebia Labs isn't even able to do, which is currently a leader, obviously, in the space today. Electric Cloud is like the top dog that we'll have to eventually usurp, and that's what we're going to be accomplishing with some of Orit's functionality with more complex deployments, but we'll also be able to attack that with our advanced deploy freezes capabilities. So that's something that I wanted you to be aware of, that runbooks, deploy freezes are all these elegant ways to compete more effectively with these really big market leaders. And the more that we can eat into their market share, the higher our valuation will be. So we have a lot of, the executive team talks about us a lot as a really big opportunity, because we have a ton of market share that we are showing as eroding already. The sales team likes talking about our offering. They're excited to bring me into conversations with deals with prospects, which is good. So well done. I'm really excited for it. I dropped in a dry run recording here with Itzik. So he did the demo presentation, and if you are interested, it's an hour-long thing, so I wouldn't recommend doing it while you have other things to do, but if you wanted to see what we presented to Forrester, it's available. Okay, the last think big topic, runbooks. So Kenny asked me to consider taking runbooks over for Configure. And it's a weird question because this also would include like incident management runbooks and configuration runbooks. So we wouldn't just be supporting the foundation for release runbooks. I think though, when we look at things like running scripts and markdown files as code and building out YAML templates for runbooks, all of that can be leveraged by these other teams. So I'll start fleshing out the user stories and requirements around those templates a little bit more after we deliver that visibility linkage and start getting people like linking their runbooks. Because if we get users linking their runbooks, we could then start looking at the data that's provided to us and what people are including. And if they're expecting us to support, you know, executing Excel files, or if they're just wanting us to support, you know, Jupyter notebooks. Right now, I don't have a lot of data on that. But I have a merge request open that Mark Punsack kind of rejected, but but Kenny just kind of told me to be the DRI over runbooks and to run with it, even though Mark said no. So we'll see how that all turns out, but just wanted to give you an update on how that's working. And we'll be working across 3 or 4 different stages to deliver work that would be benefiting 5 different personas. So that's kind of a cool thing for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now we just gotta have to like figure out a timing for it and when it makes sense to like develop against it. Because I feel like we have right now getting release page viable, getting that linkage between runbooks, setting deploy phrases, and then secrets management. And then we'll end up getting back to refreshing the releases page, making it lovable. And then finally we'll probably get to more advanced runbooks. And then of course, like I have this other issue that Hyan and I are working on, which is the CI/CD director dashboard to give users more visibility into their CI/CD metrics and value stream. So that's
So in a really quick nutshell, what will the director dashboard look like?
Yeah, so it's my intent to pick 5 metrics that currently exist at the project level, aggregate them at the group level, and showcase them over time. So this might be your shared minutes across all projects. Mm-hmm. This might be the number of commits or the number of past commits over the past 30 days, or total number running of releases across your projects. So picking those 5 metrics, I have Kraz, I think, assigned to that research issue. He'll just have to look at what's available and then what's easy to aggregate and create something. Because I really just want to see, like, today people aren't really looking at the CI/CD analytics dashboard because it's like not very useful information. It just kind of tells you things that are like pipelines and
it's technical. It's very technical, right? Yeah.
So I want to give people insights about the stuff that's happening in GitLab. And I think that will help people who are managing teams or people who are interested in what's going on in GitLab a little bit more of that ROI conversation they're looking for. Mm-hmm. But we have a lot. We have a couple of components that we'll be reusing from the analytics team. So hopefully, and then of course, Nathan, you dropped that beautiful link of like, here's all our charts that we have. So we'll be hopefully reusing a lot of those standards too.
Awesome.
Jackie, do you think we can already plan some solution validation around it? Because we already have a target for it, but from a UX point of view.
So
do you have that in the pipeline?
Yeah, what I wanted to do was to get the technical research for what metrics could be used, because in my past life, I managed analytics across 30 products. And every time I went into a room that showed somebody a dashboard or a graphic, they wanted to see it with the metrics and KPIs that they would be getting. So I need to understand what KPIs are going to be relevant, and then we'll be able to show them that. Because otherwise we could schedule solution validation with our current analytics dashboards, right? And that would give them a feel for how this would look and how the interactions would be. But I would want to test is this information meaningful for you?
Then I think I was a bit confused about it, because I thought that we would choose those metrics and then reuse the components and then quickly put together a dashboard.
No, you're understanding that correctly.
Okay.
I just need CRAS to confirm that those 5 metrics are actually going to be easy to aggregate.
Okay, like from a technical point of view.
Yes, because if it's going to take us like 2 milestones to get the pipeline open for that data, we got to figure out an easier metric to churn up.
Yeah. Because when we talk about dashboards, I think, I'm not sure what happened. We had a UX effort about standardizing, the user experience or improving the overall UX of dashboards, because we're all building different dashboards.
Yeah.
They all look a bit messy. And maybe we can also, in the future, look at this as an opportunity to bring like improvements to the components and to the overall user experience that can be applied across GitLab. Because we have the environments dashboard, and that thing is really weird. And if we can make improvements to this group level dashboard, I also want to look at what can impact the environments dashboard.
I love the way you're thinking. That makes perfect sense. I feel like once we build out this group level dashboard, that the second priority will be environments, because we'll start to see people follow the commits and the environments. Like that's a journey that they'll take. So we may link people from the director dashboard to the environments dashboard, because that'll get them into the project, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just going to be
Yeah,
weird.
exactly. I would rather land them from analytics to project, rather than from group analytics to project, because that will be just such a jarring experience if they start at the group level and then they dive like headfirst into all the details. So we'll think through that a little bit more. We have 2 minutes. How's it going, guys? Sean, are you exhausted? You're like, this sucks. I don't want to come to these think big meetings anymore.
That's all good for me. It's the end of my day, so I'm usually, yeah.
I need to make this earlier for you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
I was wondering, I mean, it's usually the 4 of us, but I was wondering if we shouldn't include like Jake and what's the name of the other guy? I always forget exactly, because I don't see these people often. Because sometimes we're talking about these issues that, for example, we're talking about issues that revolve around their workload, but also they want to.
I think the opportunity here is to elevate both Sean and Nathan as more of our senior leaders in their development spaces. So that's kind of the intent, is to create this cohort that then can be shared throughout the teams. Create SMEs, if you will. At least that's what I want to do. It makes it way easier to like say, Sean, you're my back-end guy. Can you help me out here? And then
Sure.
Then coach and mentor the other teams to kind of understand the product vision. And also creates layers for development in our team from a product management perspective too.
Makes sense.
Do you think we're going to, is there any plan? I know things are changing, to increase the size of the team, the engineering team.
So from the hiring plan today, there isn't any additional headcount to be allocated.
Okay. Yeah.
But in talking to Kenny, it looks like that if we do end up taking more things like configure or other functionality, that it makes sense to increase the people that we have on our team. And the best way that we'll be able to gain more people is by driving more revenue, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So wherever which is why like what I'm here to do for you guys is to show you the money hot holes and be like, we're going to develop against that so we can get more people on our team.
I mean, it's really exciting what we're doing, but each piece seems actually quite big, right?
Yeah. And,
and not only big with big potential, right? Because like once we get started on each of those paths, they can just get massive by themselves, which is awesome.
It's scary for me because I also have this fear that we're going to get a bunch of like little things out the door, but we're never going to get a complete thing shipped. And making sure that like as the product manager, that we keep a really tight iteration cycle on some of these features, like expanding the edit capabilities. For me, it feels like we do move slow. Like I have to wait every milestone to get a new edit capability, and it makes me anxious because how does the end user feel when they're creating and editing releases?
Yep.
So I completely relate to this. I love this value of iteration, but I do feel like our iteration cycles are not as short as I would want them to be to realize the value that we're releasing. A month-long iteration cycle can be hard to stomach when you also have like a huge backlog of future potential to go against. So you're totally right. It is daunting.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, I also think the small iterations are great from one perspective, but from the perspective of a customer, it's like, why do they just give us the whole thing already, right? You know, like, well, you know, how come we can see it but we can't edit it? You know, things like that. You know, like it must. Yeah,
you're exactly right, and that's why, like, I pulled in for Nathan's waiting some of the create and edit capabilities so that we can just implement both of them and parallelize that. So we're introducing two functionalities of a really small feature piece so that the user has a seamless experience on the create and edit side. Because otherwise, like, we could say we're only going to support create first, and then you get to create everything at once. And then they're going to be like, but I want to be able to edit.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And I mean, the whole milestone thing, Sean, I can't believe you. I nearly cried when you associated my milestones to my releases because I curled for like 3 days trying to get
no, but that's the thing.
I was like, what is going on?
No, but that's the thing. We're saying y'all can do everything if you just go and use the API. And it's like, okay, okay, yes, that's true, but you know, it's not ideal.
And then I had another problem with caching and browsers, and I'm like, dude, I'm not the least technical person in the world, but I feel like it right now. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for your commitment on this. You're amazing.
No worries. Have a great day.
All right. Bye, y'all.